All right, let's get right into it. We're talking about one of the most brilliant and, let's be honest, most controversial generals in history. This is a story about a man whose monumental ego and ambition clashed so hard with his president that it nearly dragged the entire world into a nuclear World War III. This is the incredible story of General Douglas MacArthur and his war in Korea.
I want you to just picture this for a second. It's December 1950. The North Korean capital, Pyongyang, is literally on fire. The roads are just choked with panicked civilians fleeing into the brutal cold, carrying whatever they can, with absolutely no idea where they're going. This scene of pure chaos, it perfectly captures the insane back-and-forth nature of the Korean War. The stakes here were just unbelievably high.
So, how did it all get to this point? Well, after World War II, Korea was sliced in half right along the 38th parallel. You had the Soviet-backed North and the US-backed South, and here's the kicker. Both of them claimed to be the one true government. By 1950, those tensions were ready to explode.
And then, on June 25, 1950, it happened. North Korea launched this massive, all-out surprise invasion. The attack was so fast, so successful, that the UN and South Korean forces were just completely run over. I mean, within a couple of months, they were literally trapped with their backs to the sea in this tiny little pocket around the port of Busan. It really, truly looked like the war was over before it had even begun.
With total defeat just around the corner, the UN decided to call in the big guns. They turned to this larger-than-life figure, the absolute hero of the Pacific in World War II, General Douglas MacArthur. His job? To somehow pull a rabbit out of the hat and snatch victory from the jaws of certain defeat. And MacArthur? Well, he didn't come up with some safe, predictable plan. Oh no, he came up with an incredibly audacious gamble. It was the kind of move that would either save the entire war or lead to an even bigger, more catastrophic disaster.
See, trying to just punch their way out of the Busan perimeter would have been a total meat grinder. The North Koreans were dug in, they were ready, and a direct attack would have been a bloodbath. It probably would have failed anyway. MacArthur knew he had to do something completely, totally unexpected.
And you know, even MacArthur himself wasn't shy about the risks. He called his own plan a desperate gamble. He knew full well that this whole thing could blow up in his face. Failure was a very, very real possibility.
So what was this crazy plan? Well, it was an amphibious assault, but a really, really risky one. First, his forces would have to navigate the insane 31-foot tides at the port of Incheon. We're talking a logistical nightmare. Second, they'd land a massive army hundreds of miles behind enemy lines, hoping for total surprise. And third, from there, they'd cut the North Korean army supply lines, basically strangling them from behind. And you know what? It worked. It worked brilliantly. The landing on September 15th was a jaw-dropping success. The North Koreans were completely blindsided. Their supply lines were severed, the UN forces broke out of Busan, and just like that, the entire war was turned on its head. So with the North Korean army on the run, MacArthur had done it. He had achieved his objective. But for a man like MacArthur, that wasn't enough. And what he did next would change the war and the world forever.
Riding high from his incredible victory at Incheon, MacArthur didn't stop. He pushed his forces north, right across the 38th parallel. His new goal? Destroy the rest of the North Korean army and unite the entire country. He even told President Truman, don't worry, there's no way the Chinese will get involved. The reversal of fortune was just stunningly fast. On October 19th, UN forces take Pyongyang. Awesome. Just over a month later, MacArthur launches his famous Home by Christmas offensive. But then, bam! Just a few days later, 300,000 Chinese soldiers who had secretly poured across the border smash into his unprepared forces. By December 5th, his army was in a full-blown panic retreat from that same city he'd just captured. Total triumph to absolute disaster in less than 2 months. And look, this wasn't just a minor setback. It was a complete catastrophe. This surprise attack forced MacArthur's troops into a desperate, freezing retreat in the middle of a brutal Korean winter. It goes down as one of the most harrowing and bloody retreats in all of American military history. This disaster, it brought the real conflict of the Korean War into the spotlight. And it wasn't a fight between two armies on a battlefield. It was a battle of wills between a 5-star general and the President of the United States. These two men were on a total collision course. MacArthur wanted to escalate. He wanted to win.
no matter the cost. He was demanding permission to bomb bases inside China, to use nuclear weapons if he had to unleash other forces. But Truman, he was terrified. He feared a bigger war with China. He feared the Soviets getting involved. He feared that any of MacArthur's plans would ignite a nuclear World War III.
For MacArthur, it was really simple. You fight a war to win it. Period. Anything less than total victory was, in his mind, just weakness. This idea of a limited war with one hand tied behind his back just made no sense to him.
But for Truman, the goal wasn't just about winning in Korea. He was looking at the global chessboard. His main job, as he saw it, was to stop a small war from turning into a global apocalypse. He had to contain the conflict, not let it spiral out of control. MacArthur just kept pushing, publicly criticizing the president's policies, basically challenging the core idea of civilian control over the military. So, Truman, faced with a general who was going rogue, made one of the most shocking decisions in American history. He fired a national hero in the middle of a war.
But firing MacArthur, that didn't end the story, not by a long shot. In fact, it kicked off a political firestorm back in the States and really cemented his complicated, controversial legacy.
You see, MacArthur didn't come home in shame. He came home to ticker-tape parades and massive cheering crowds. In San Francisco alone, 500,000 people came out to welcome him. The country was completely torn apart over whether Truman did the right thing.
And then, in this unbelievable moment, he gave a farewell address to a joint session of Congress. It was pure political theater, a masterful and emotional speech where he ended with that iconic line. It captivated the whole country and pretty much defined his image forever.
So, what happened to the war? Well, it just ground on. 2 more years of brutal, bloody stalemate. And it didn't even end with a victory. It ended with an armistice in 1953. After an estimated 4 million people were dead, the border was drawn right back where it started. A divided Korea, a tense standoff that's still with us to this very day.
Which leaves us with this huge question, one people still argue about. Was MacArthur a dangerous rogue general whose ego almost started World War III? Or was he a military genius who was stopped from achieving a clear victory by timid politicians? And maybe the bigger question their clash raises for us is this. In a democracy, who really gets the final say in a war? The celebrated general on the ground or the elected president back home?